Patty, you are amazing. I love you. You're the best ever. And thank you so much for joining here and taking your precious time, valuable time that I know you don't have a lot to talk to me and to do this beautiful video that I know it's going to be amazing and it's going to be a lot of crazy stuff and interesting stuff. So I want to ask you to start, like, we are both like passionate ethical vegans.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that happen to us? What did happen to you, for instance, specifically?
Well, I mean, I've always loved animals. I remember since a very young child, I've always I wanted a dog as soon as I could talk. I just loved to be around animals. And from there, I didn't make the connection with what was on my plate to me loving animals like when I was young, because, when your parents feed you certain foods, you just kind of eat what they give you. So it wasn't until I was probably in my 20s that I started making the connections. And that was, in the 1990s when, because I'm pretty old now. So that was in the 1990s when
you're talking to somebody who grew up in the 70s. Don't forget that.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah. So but I think, I remember in college I met a guy that was a vegan and I was like, what? You don't eat any animal foods? And I thought that was odd, because veganism in, the early 1990s, that was not something that was popular. But, I had that experience, and then, I went to medical school, and I don't know, I started kind of noticing that there are certain things that I agree with and certain things I don't agree with. And it was after medical school that I kind of became familiar with, there is something called veganism, and I'm very much aligned with it. And I actually found it through, wanting to be a better healthcare practitioner, because I found somebody, I found Dr. Joel Fuhrman. I don't know if you're familiar with who he is.
Yes, and she was mentioned in the book that I read about veganism. Exactly.
Yeah, I did an internship with him, and while I was up there, working with patients, and he was running a water fasting clinic at the time, and he came from, the natural hygiene movement, where they basically eat, foods in their natural state, and, they abide by the laws of nature, proper sun exposure, proper rest, proper diet. And, he had so many books. When I was up there staying with him at the clinic, I just was like, this vegan thing is right on, because I already love animals. Why am I not doing this? Right. So, and and it was, so that's kind of where it all started. I wanted to help people heal, and he was healing people. He was actually helping people reverse disease, mostly using water fasting, but also teaching his patients, okay, you've done this water fast, you've reversed whatever chronic disease you had. And he did do that. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. And we see this now every day as detoxification specialists, but I wasn't seeing that when I was in allopathic medicine, that kind of turnaround. And but then, coming off the water fast, how do I maintain this newfound level of health? And he was promoting, basically a raw vegan diet,
Okay, so plant-based raw even. Yeah.
Well, no, I think he doesn't mind cooked foods. I mean, I think at the time it was he suggested raw foods, but he would use some cooked foods too. So he was not as pure raw, like some of the other people in the plant-based community are. But so that's kind of where it all began for me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people misunderstand what we do. We're not saying to people, oh, you have to be fruitarian for the rest of your life or raw vegan for the rest of your life. I feel like people misunderstand that we're basically, as long as you have to heal something, you have some health issues, that you have to be like using fruits are the way to make your body heal, right? And then the plant, like the vegetables, are to build. So I feel this is something that a lot of people think, oh, and they also target, for instance, Dr. Morris, or maybe the people are surprised, like, oh, you have a cooked meal in winter. Yeah, I live in Alps and I don't have any more health issues that I used to have. So yeah. But for me, it's very important to stay plant-based, to not to reverse that, right? So yeah, can I find out a little bit more about, why, this ethical aspect? Because you're saying it was all about the health for you to start with the plant-based diet, right? But what then turned you into like basically somebody who's like a little bit of an animal activist? I would say, like, like I came from completely animal activism to I didn't even care if it's healthy or not. You know what I mean? So how did it turn you, like, because of your dogs, right? This connection just made it switch for you immediately?
Well, I mean, I think I've always loved animals, and animal activism, I think it was something that I agreed with wholeheartedly. I
Yeah.
never really like opposed, thinking that animals didn't have rights. I really felt for them, and I had this emotional reaction to wanting to help animals, as much as I want to help humans. I thought both were quite important. But it was when it aligned with my desire to want to help people heal as a healthcare practitioner, when I could put two and two together, and it's like, this is a win-win, because
Exactly.
I'm helping people heal and I'm not infringing on the rights of these beings to exist on this planet. And when
Right.
and because this was like the 1990s, and this was really, it predates the internet as big as it is today.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't have the awareness of just how much abuse animals endured at the hands of humanity, with the slaughterhouses and all of the various trades that I mean, there's so many documentaries out there now that people can watch just to see. I mean, if you're strong enough to watch these documentaries, because they're really challenging to
Agreed. Yeah. For me,
witness.
Earthling, I saw it only
Yeah.
once. The Earthlings only once, and it was enough. Because for me, it was a book, and talking to the Tom York from Radiohead in Oxford before they were even famous, and he's the
Really?
first. Yeah, Radiohead. I don't know if you remember the band from
I
long.
love Radiohead. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that band. I did not know Tom York was an animal activist or a
yeah.
vegan. Oh.
Yeah, he was in the younger years. I don't know what's going on with him now, because it's now private and all this stuff, and they're way older, right?
Mhm.
But it's really interesting that they're probably the most intellectual band, right? Because all of them has, like, I think even PhDs and masters and so on. But on top of it, like, they're very, very into health and natural healing. And for me, this was the first encounter with somebody. I was probably like not even 16 years old. I went for exchange student to Oxford, and he was the first person that I met who was basically, he told me like, oh, cows have to be pregnant, and then, they take away their babies, and then they take their milk. And then it clicked to me for some reason. And I saw, like, I didn't live like somewhere just in the city. I saw these small farms. But then I actually started to see, even in these small farms, farmers don't treat nicely animals. It's not like this pastures and all this stuff. So this was like, for me, it was definitely just cows specifically, because of this, how they treated their babies are kidnapped and so on. But not to go too far with this. Let's go back to the health and your career. So you, believe it or not, I wanted to be a doctor as well. And I went to, like, we call this like getting to know university day, when you come and go visit and see what these students are doing. And they were so obnoxious that I decided to go completely other direction to architecture. So this was my reason but I prepared myself, like chemistry and biology. This was like really my direction, right? Because I wanted to be actually reconstructive plastic surgeon. That was my goal. And then I completely dropped this because they're like, but my dad is a doctor. What is that going to help me? I'm like, what the heck? So that's why I became architect, and then went computer science and so on, and then completely something else, nutrition, and so on. But tell me your story. So you went to medical school. What was the goal, and what happened to turn you away? Basically seeing, what this guy can do, right?
Well, yeah, when I did an internship, because actually my first several years of med school, when you go through the first 2 years, it's all book work. It's just you're learning about the human body. You're doing a little bit of clinical work, very little though.
Yeah.
but when I started doing more clinical work, I was very I just felt disconnected from the people I was working with. It felt too sterile. It felt too like I was treating these humans like, you know, some kind of manufacturing device that I had to fix. I wasn't encapsulating who these humans were on their various levels, you know. And back that at that time I could not articulate this, you know. I've since, you know, gone back and realized, okay, I was trying to connect on these people at an emotional, mental, spiritual level. And my training was just totally making me focus on them at the physical level only. I
Correct.
wasn't able
Yeah.
to connect them with the way I wanted to. And I don't know. And then I would start to get really, you know, some of the patients I was working with, I would get very emotionally connected to. You know, I remember one woman in particular, we were doing just clinical assessments at like a nursing home, and she was in her 90s. And I just remember looking at her frail little hands, and my heart was reaching out to her, and she was having dementia and she couldn't remember things. And I was doing in my assessment and she couldn't remember that I just did something to her, you know. And I'm asking her questions and she starts to recall, or she starts to actually think that she's a child again, and she's asking me to go get her pony for her. And I'm like,
Oh,
you know, this is it was breaking my heart. And I'm like, how can I walk away from this and just go back to the real world when I know that this is all taking place? And I also know that what they're going to give this old woman is probably going to hurt her, you know,
mhm.
in the form of pharmaceuticals, or are they really giving her
Correct.
care, or where is her family? Why isn't she connecting with people that, you know, can show her the love that she needs? And so it just started like that. And I
Mhm.
remember, you know, feeling this, like, what am I doing with this career? Why am I here?
Yeah,
And
hopeless. Yeah,
yeah,
hopeless. Probably
and
despite all the knowledge that you had, you felt like you don't have the tools to really help people. That's
exactly.
this
That
allopathic medical system, right?
that is so true. Yeah, that's exactly, I think, where I was at
Of
that
hopeless.
time.
Mhm.
And I remember going to like one of the bookstores and I came across one of Joel Furman's books in the bookstore. It was called Fasting for Health. And I'm like, Fasting for Health. I thought that was an interesting title. I picked it up. I started looking at it. I read the book and I'm like, this is amazing. Drinking nothing but water and reversing disease. So I reached out to him and I told him I was a medical student and I wanted to work with him because I wanted to, you know, something that seemed more natural, where the body was doing the work itself. You know, that was the main
Mhm.
message. Like, once you get out of the body's way, it knows exactly what to do to heal. It knows exactly what to do to bring you back to a state of homeostasis where all systems are working optimally. And he's like, yeah, you can come up, and I have student interns, you know, that stay with me at my clinic. And so we set it up and I stayed up there for a few months and I was just amazed. I just felt really good being in that environment. And I was actually staying at the facility where his water fasting patients were staying. There was another man there who was a chiropractor, also learning from him. And so we were kind of like the two people at the house that were like, you know, making sure the patients were okay, doing the clinical assessments, drawing their blood to make sure their electrolytes were still in the normal range. And I got to stay with these people and I got to hear their stories and learn from them. And I really liked that feeling of, you know, all levels of who I was connecting with this patient and, you know, seeing the reversal of health. And it was a give and take. It wasn't like I was there as the authoritarian and they were there just to receive what I had to give, but
Right.
they were teaching me too. And I learned so much from the patients. And I remember, you know, I was kind of dreading going back to the old way of things after, you know, when my time up there at the clinic was coming close to an end. And Dr. Furman, you know, took me to the side one day and he's like, you know, I don't make a lot of money as a physician. And right now I think he's doing pretty well for himself because he has since, you know, gone kind of more mainstream and he's got a whole online program that he does. But back then in the 1990s, he said, I don't make a lot of money doing this, you know, and because he came from natural hygiene and he doesn't think pharmaceuticals are the way to go. Yes, he'll prescribe them if it's needed, but he will do everything before prescribing a chemical, to try to help his patients heal. And he's like, I make most of my money writing books and, giving presentations, but I'm not really making money as a doctor. So you might want to think about that.
Right.
And
makes sense.
yeah,
I do need to ask you something, because we're not really fond of water fasting, right? Because a lot of people don't know how to do it right. And this is why I always say, don't go into this direction if you really don't understand how water fasting works, because can really just wash you out, right? Like all this stuff, minerals, everything, put your kidneys at strains. You really need to know how to do it. And that's why I'm glad that you're mentioning, it's a clinic and this guy studied this and he figured out some formula that it's quite demanding to learn. You got to study this stuff. You can't just like do the 30 days water and feel that like, okay, this is going to help me, right? The same with dry fasting. I mean, some people now like that I know, they're doing dry fasting 16 days. I'm like, how can you still be alive? But they are, and they heal some stuff. I'm like, how's this even possible? But it's really step by step. They go to that level probably in years. So like, how did you end up getting to know Dr. Morse, Robert? Where did he come into the play? And, how did you ended up in his team? And I'm so glad you are now part of his team. It's just great to see the Q&As. Two of you are like, like the knowledge is bursting everywhere, it's like incredible. But tell me, did you ever had health issue that you had to heal, or it was just for others, to help others?
Well, it's so interesting. So after my experience with Dr. Furman, I actually left medicine altogether. I just couldn't, I didn't know that naturopaths were even a route I could have gone. I could have gone a more natural route. I was just in this one frame of thinking like, okay, I'm going to become a medical doctor and I'm going to have to, I know there's a standard of care and I'm going to be licensed and I'm going to be handcuffed to actually have to, recommend certain treatments. And I didn't want to have to do that. So I decided to leave medicine. I took a couple of years off and I was actually in a band and, did some fun things for a while. But then, I needed to get a real job and I went into college teaching. So I became a college professor, which I'm still doing that to this day. I've been teaching anatomy and physiology for 23 years now. And but back when I first started teaching at the college level, I guess it was I started teaching full-time in 2005. And before that, I was doing part-time teaching. But when I got my first full-time teaching position, I was really putting in a lot of work and, trying to be like, this great professor and making my lectures fun and dynamic. And I was kind of neglecting my health, and I should have known better. I was, vegan, vegetarian at the time. I think I wasn't as strict about it, but, if I went to a restaurant, it might have had some butter in it. So I wasn't too strict at that time, but I wasn't really paying attention to my health. I was just paying attention to work. And I remember I got to the point where I started to feel a lot of negative symptoms. I started having like these anxiety attacks while lecturing. So that was scary. Like I'd be in front of a group of 25 students and my heart would start racing. I was having some skin issues, rashes. I know I gained weight. And then I remember going to my doctor, telling her all of my symptoms, and she did some blood work. A couple of blood markers were going up. And I knew when those blood markers went up, I knew what that meant. I knew that meant I have internal inflammation and I need to do something about this. So when my symptoms started getting scary enough to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to remember what I learned when I was with Dr. Furman, I started to get back out all of my old natural hygiene books. And I just started to follow, a raw foods diet. And at first it was kind of hard because, as a college professor, I was drinking a lot of coffee and, snacking on vending machine foods when I didn't have time to get a proper meal. And I think I was, addicted to these synthetic chemicals they add to many processed foods. So I joined this online, and this was the early days of, not early days, it was probably 2010, 2009. I joined this online community that did a bunch of green smoothies. And I just did that for, a couple of months, and I felt amazing.
Is it Gerson therapy?
No,
Gerson
it was like the green
therapy?
smoothie. It was
Okay.
called like the green smoothie challenge or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And this woman, gave recipes, and Dr. Furman actually introduced me to Vitamix back when I was working with him. So I got a Vitamix blender, and I was like gung ho, and I did this, and I started feeling really good. And as I was getting it back into this and finding these groups online, I came across Dr. Morris's videos. And people were talking about Dr. Morris, and I'm like, who is this guy? So I started watching his videos. And
what years was that, if I can ask you?
This was probably 2011.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That I think I came across Dr. Morris. So I had already, changed my lifestyle, and I was into doing, even when I should mention this, when I was with Dr. Furman, I was kind of inspired, and I did a water fast myself up there. So I had done fasting before, and now I was just doing like juice cleansing and smoothie cleansing, if you will, and raw foods. So, but it made me feel so amazing. And I was just really excited about it, because even though I wasn't practicing as a physician anymore, I was excited that I was able to reverse all of my symptoms. Everything that I was troubled with went away. I remember going back like 3 or 4 months later, and my doctor drew my blood again, and she's like, wow, what did you do? You look amazing. Everything is perfect. Tell me what you did so I can tell my other patients. and she thought it was amazing. I mean, she was a vegetarian doctor anyway, so she was kind of supportive of me. But yeah, I remember I wanted, because you never are completely satisfied with where you think your health could be. So I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Morris, and I remember talking to him. The first thing I asked him was about, this whole lymphatic system to the kidneys, because I'm like, that's not what I teach. I don't show that the kidneys filter the lymph. And so we had a great discussion about this, and I could see where he was coming from, and just how intuitive he was, and how he could tap in with certain levels of knowing how the human body works, that I was just really amazed with. So he and I developed this great connection, and yeah, so I ordered some herbs. That's when I became familiar with herbology and working with the herbs. And then, just a few years after that, I'm like, I want to become a detoxification specialist. And then after that, I actually took a year off of teaching and went down to Florida and worked with him. So it kind of just slowly unfolded. And yeah, so that's kind of how I became connected with Dr. Morris.
Super cool. I'm like so happy, like that's what happened. I mean, this is correct. Like for me, it was also, wait a minute, at the end of lymphatic systems, pretty much this kidneys, skin, and like, how does that work? Like, because they teach you, right, it goes into the blood, and I don't know what, it's like weird stuff, that doesn't make sense. But it's amazing that this modern science is actually proving that he is correct, right? That it does work somehow, this whole thing, it goes through the kidneys. So I'm excited when I feel that like medical science is about 50 years behind what actually science is. And I think it's because it's working really nice for pharma and certain, we know who, right?
Yeah.
So, like when it comes to this medical science, I think they really have to catch up. And I apologize about my English, because I speak with my husband English, but now we live in Slovenia and I'm constantly using Slovene. So I think my vocabulary is like basically on 12-year-old vocabulary now, because and I don't have time to read books or watch movies or anything, to kind of refresh. So apologies about that, but
doing great.
Yeah, I'm doing my best. I'll get better again. But you just like, I love listening to you, like especially when it's Q&A, like two of you together, such a great energy. And I said, we need female Dr. Morris as well, because all of these healers throughout the history, it's only men. It's like, what's wrong with this? Like, this picture, something is not correct, something is not right there. Because I know that naturally women are more intuitive and we can feel people, right? And that helps when it comes to natural health, for sure.
Yeah.
And you look so young and you look so beautiful right now. It's incredible. And I love that shirt. Like, it's a really good tone to you. I used to have, probably most of my life I had red hair. And then I got, and then I got like, because naturally it's like dark blonde, right? And then I would always use henna. And it was just so hard to match. If I changed henna color, so hard to match, the color of what grew out. And just like, I can't do this anymore. So that's when I, totally gave up on my red hair. But like, I love it. It looks amazing on you, by the way. So tell me a little bit about your dogs and like this rescuing dogs. How did you get into that? Because this is something, again, that we have so much in common. And I want to know, like, why certain people do certain things, and why did certain people come to the same point from the completely different parts of the world, completely different stories, but we have similar personality at the end, right? Like maybe similar souls from a similar place, I don't know what happens, So you have 3 rescue dogs now?
3 rescue dogs and a rescue cat. Yeah.
Okay. And dogs get along with a cat okay? Because mine,
they all grew up together. So I had a 22-year-old cat that passed away at the beginning of 2020. She passed away. So but
I actually remember that, believe it or not.
Yeah. And my the other cat I have, he's going to be 18 next week. And he grew up with my dogs. He thinks he's a dog. He sleeps with the dogs. My 17-and-a-half-year-old dog and my 18-year-old, almost 18-year-old cat, they're best friends. They grew up together.
Aww.
And then the younger 2 dogs, they just think, it's normal to have a cat. Family. So they all get along.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And you've been rescuing dogs all of your life, like since you were a child? Because that was my case. But
well, I wish I could
from
have.
the shelters or kids?
Well, I wanted a dog ever since I could talk. I remember family members having dogs, and I just was enthralled with them and wanted to be around them. But my parents kind of held off, and it wasn't until I think I was a teenager that they thought I would be responsible enough to care for a dog. So I think our first dog we didn't adopt. My parents, purchased the dog from a breeder. But, as I became an adult and then I became aware of, shelter animals, when I realized they put animals to sleep, I'm like, I've got to save all of these animals, right? I can't buy dogs when I know that there are shelter animals being put to sleep. I actually worked at an animal shelter for a while, and that was quite
eye-opening, right?
Yes, for sure. And as I was a volunteer, and then when they found out I had a medical background, they asked me if I would help with, and this was before I knew the health stuff I know today, but I kind of knew it, but I wasn't as adamant about it. But they asked me to provide some of the medical treatments for the animals since I had a medical background, and I agreed to do that. But the one thing I did not do was the euthanasia. I could not do that, and I had to put my foot down. I'm like, I'll pick up all of the poop in all of the cages, but I'm not going to, be responsible for ending an animal's life. I just can't. And I remember a couple of times I had to be in the room and that was taking place, and I would cry uncontrollably. And then people that would do this normally, they started crying. I was like opening up their, channels of like connecting with these beings. And I don't know, I've always had that, and I'm sure you have it too, that really strong connection to this is a living being. Why are we doing this? Why are we ending their life? There's nothing wrong with this animal. And I would take home animals that I knew, because I kind of would learn the system, like what animal, when their time would be up, before they would be euthanized next, those were the animals I would take home. And I would, do something with them to help them get adopted, like teach them a cute little trick and then take them to the, places where we would advertise these animals. And, it was easy to do. You just had to put the effort in. But I did that for a while, and all of my animals are rescue. The one thing I don't like about the rescue organizations is that they do kind of vaccinate the animals. And I think that causes some issues. But
I lost my first, my dearest rescue, Trinity, like that because of New York. She got you have to vaccinate them every year.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you serious? Because in Slovenia, we don't do that,
Right. They don't, yeah.
Yeah, and it was really weird. And then also some other vaccines. And when she came to the shelter, they immediately, they cut everything up and she was 3 months old and could not have babies anymore, in Slovenia, they wait, until 7 months at least.
Yeah.
So they develop to a certain level. So certain things I didn't understand, but then you understand, it's just they don't have time.
I know.
In
They
New
don't
York City, it was just like in Bronx when I came in, I was like, there's so many animals. And euthanasia, one by one was not even an option.
Right.
What in some places they would use even gas chambers.
I know.
And and the people, if you think about dogs and cats, this is to them so cruel. But how do farmers then do their animals? The cows, they take care of them, and the pigs and all this stuff. I just don't understand. It must be super hard for them too somehow, or at least some of them. They can't be all just, oh yeah, this is my animals, I raised them from zero, just get rid of them or whatever, take them to slaughterhouse. So this is something that I don't understand, that people, they feel so disgusted, for instance, by, killing dogs and torturing dogs. But then at the same time, pigs and cows, they're super gentle animals and super smart as well, and chickens, they don't feel anything. I still don't understand that, but I'm so glad. I appreciate you, helping dogs, because I think they're beside farm animals, the most tortured animals out there, beings out there on this planet. And it's not their fault. It's because we multiply them, right? They end up on streets, and they end up on, and end up and my dogs are all from the streets. I picked them up from the streets, literally, not even from shelter, right? Because here you go to south more to Serbia or Bulgaria or Romania, and it's just dogs on the street. You can just drive around and just find a dog and pick it and bring it back home. Of course, you have to take it to a vet and get everything, vaccines and all this stuff,
Yeah.
But the good news is you can pay off somebody, and it's a little bit gray zone. Yeah, so this is something, because my Gloria was definitely in the ditch, starved to death. Recently had puppies too. You could see from her little titties, being enlarged, and a lot of trauma, but she's doing great. I feel that she's super sensitive dog, to everything what's happening emotionally. If we start to fight, she starts shaking. She just hides.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah, and it's not even, that you yell or anything like that. She just knows when some negativity happens, some negative energies, that something will happen. Yeah, and she thinks Art is her puppy now.
Oh.
she's like, the one thing that we had an incident so far, nothing else happened, but he was crawling on the grass, and she started doing the zoomies.
Really?
She started doing zoomies because she was happy because we're playing, and in one of the zoomies, she into Art, and he flew up. Luckily, he landed up on the grass and everything was fine, but he was so scared. He was like, ah! crying, but it's all good. But she is his bestie, you know, like he's giving her fingers all the time, touching her. We have to teach him how to touch gently, because
Mhm.
babies, I mean, you really need to put the boundaries, and it's
Yeah.
not easy, you know, because you think you trust this animal because, you know, that's your other child, right? And then the
Right.
human child, it's pretty crazy, but it's doable. Everything is doable. You know, I feel like animals get it, you know, in their hearts. You tell them, don't hurt this being, and they understand, right? Okay, so yeah, this detox, you know, detox and fruits. And you know, I was thinking, you know, when the library in Alexandria burned down, there was a lot of knowledge lost.
That's true. Yeah.
And you know, we know that Greeks had something with healing with fruit
Hmm.
already, right? And Romans did the same thing, because I read some books about the Romans, basically, even in Croatia, nearby us here, they were basically using fruit to heal, like figs and grapes and so on. And I wonder, like, why do we feel this is so fresh and so crazy? Because I feel this is some kind of old knowledge that
Yeah.
nobody's using, because it doesn't bring profit really to, you know, there's you can, anybody can do it, right? Nothing to pay. You have fruit, sun, walking, and herbs. That's what we're promoting. Four things.
Right.
And where do you make money now? Okay, maybe a little bit herbs, sun, it's free. You know, fruit, okay, high quality fruit can be expensive, especially in the areas, you know, like I come now, I live in Alps, not anymore. We're basically between Ljubljana and Barcelona. And
Hmm.
Barcelona is amazing because the boats come, you know, for Europe, they bring from South America. So it's incredible fruit. But yeah, tell me, like, a little bit more about your fruit experience, and like, what do you think about this whole fruit? Like, why does it work so well? And how can we explain this to more people faster? Because my problem is, when I approach to somebody, for instance, I spoke to somebody today who has a lymphatic cancer, 4th stage. I'm not sure if I said it correctly.
At stage 4. Yeah.
Yeah, stage 4, young woman, gorgeous, used to work here on TV, like, so she's in media and so on. And I felt like I don't want to like push it too much, but you know, she started doing chemo just now, fresh. And I almost wanted to tell her, please try
Yeah.
something else before you go into this. But like, they probably scared her, in stage
Right.
4. And she actually lived in US and moved to Slovenia, because here the treatment is free for cancer.
Wow.
You
Okay.
know, we have Assurus covers everything from chemo to radiation, everything. And I think in US, it's about $100,000. I mean, so it's crazy. So she came home, and I spoke to her just today, and I didn't know how to really approach, like, you know, like, oh, we heal people with fruit, you know, because we use also other things, right?
Mhm.
So how do you approach a person who never heard of this healing with fruit, and explain to them what we do actually, and not sound crazy? So this is my question to you. How do you do this? If you do
Well,
it.
yeah. I mean, I guess I feel fortunate because a lot of the people that find me already know about Dr. Moore, so they already have an idea
Correct.
about the fruit. But I know that, teaching to traditional college students, and a lot of the students that I teach are going into the allopathic medical system, the system that I ran away from. And they, like many people, are under the misconception that fruit is too much sugar and we shouldn't use fruit because, what about diabetes? What about all of these other things? And then, even like they also feel like you need to get protein from animal products. So there's a lot of, I think, propaganda that keep people stuck in these belief systems where they think they need these certain things for nourishment and for health. Um,
Mhm.
and I agree with you. I think there was a lot of knowledge lost with, the different ways in which societies have eradicated, books and other means of knowledge. Like Pythagoras was a vegan and he was big on fasting, and all of these ways that, we have, these God-given rights where we can heal our body quite easily. And it is pretty much free. I mean, if you know how to grow a fruit tree, you can be set for life. And you can grow herbs. I mean, I find herbs, I routinely go in my backyard and I pick dandelion leaves, and I've got stinging nettle growing in my backyard.
Yeah.
I started growing comfrey, because you can use that. You can create like a comfrey salve and heal your skin. I mean, there's so much you can do from the earth. I mean, yes, you can buy them, but you can grow it. So I think it's just I mean, I don't know. I don't try to convince a lot of people, because a lot of times I just get these blank stares if I tell somebody, you just eat nothing but fruit for, a couple of weeks and see how you feel, right? Just give it a go, try it. I mean, what could go wrong? I think people are becoming somewhat aware of fruit having healing properties, but it is the perfect food, in my opinion. I think that, when we look at where we get our food from, you've got your root vegetables from the ground. Those are a little bit more dense, more heavy. Yes, they will ground you because they're from the earth. So if you're feeling a little bit too etheric and you're out there, maybe you do need some potatoes. But for most of us, we need to rise in consciousness. We need to rise our energy. And fruit does that. And it does it in a beautiful way. I remember when I was mostly fruit for like 6 months, I had so much amazing energy. It was like I was buzzing, and I wanted to exercise. I had to move my body. It kind of forced me to get things done. So
I got our dog skinny. You know what I mean? Walking them every day, like 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes, I mean, not intensely, but just like in the forest, but yeah, this is yeah, like, I felt that, like, I did put a couple of question marks, and this is educated person, right? And quite open-minded, because she's in media and everything, so she does like journalist job as well. So, but she was like, what is she talking about? But like, then, because maybe because she knew somebody who was, she knows I'm not completely crazy, and she knows that I'm also educated, traveled, and, we speak many languages and such. So it was kind of like, okay, she's saying something that it's interesting. So I'm hoping I'll keep you posted on that. But I have to tell you one little story that happened 3 days ago. I got mastitis, the whole C-section, and also like breastfeeding, and like all the, like basically what people don't talk about, baby does drain you, does take a lot out of a female body, at least that first year, and pregnancy in the first year and second year, I would say. But I got mastitis, okay, really strong infection, right? I have no clue. Maybe because he's now bigger, he's 11 and a half months, so he draws a lot of milk and he bites a lot, it's a little bit rough. Normal for boys, supposedly. I talked to some people, and I got like really high fever, 104. Wow. I'm like, I never get fevers anymore. Like, it's very rare, but 104, all red. I thought I'm gonna die. Like, I felt so bad. Like, I couldn't lift up my head. That's how dizzy I was. I had to call basically some nanny who didn't have time, but like her daughter came to help me for like 7 hours because I couldn't handle living, literally. And then at the same time, I was thinking, okay, what do I have at home? I had watermelon, and it was really sunny outside. So I spent time basically sitting, half lying down and napping outside in the sun, eating watermelon all day. And I slept 3 hours in between, and my fever went down, and next day I was almost normal. Yeah, it's crazy. And listen, and like, I was not raw for like a while, like the pregnancy, I was mostly raw with some, in the winter, I was a little bit, it was cold, like some vegetable soups and potatoes and simple things, but plant-based, of course. And then also later, but it was incredible. Like, and I was talking to like all the people that I know, and telling them, oh, I have mastitis. Like, what girls do? What do you do when you have this problem? You got to go to hospital. You need antibiotic. You got to do this. You got to put ice on, massage and everything. Didn't do any of these things. Okay, nothing. I literally watermelon, sun, some sleep, and I was fine. And I'm talking about literally like maybe 18-hour span, of this. it's insane, and nobody would believe me, but they saw me before and after. Like, I wish I would document this, because it's incredible, right, what can fruit do.
It
For
truly
me, I love fruit. I loved it before. My mom loved the fruit, but the pediatrician convinced her that I have to eat meat and I have to have dairy. And then I became very dairy heavy baby because I hated meat. I spit everything out. So she just fed me a lot of dairy and some fruit still, but not even close to that, and really messed up my body, for later.
yeah.
But it's interesting because with 16, after talking to Tom York, and reading book A Diet for New America, I just completely switched to plant-based. To me, it was overnight. I was just so disgusted by this, what is done to the cows. I just couldn't be part of that. I don't know. I was just so shocked. Like, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to have anything to do with it, because I felt this is some kind of like a female. What if my baby would be taken away from me and my breast will be like used by some other species? Like, this can happen. What if aliens come?
I mean, yeah, it's true.
So it clicked. It got me such shock, that I just overnight, I became plant-based. And then, really you see this whole, how animals suffer more and more and more. And you just slowly, I mean, right now I'm seeing a lot of hate against ethical vegans. And I started noticing this about like 5-10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And I think it's just lack of understanding what we're about, that we're different people, that each one of us is very individual, that we're not taking over the world. We're not, this turning like fake meats, because we don't even eat that. This is just transition stuff, that helps you to get to the really plant-based, wholesome, healthy foods. But yeah, this makes me really sad that people, don't even give it a chance, and like, it's such an angry mode too. But this is something I need to ask you, this like US, when I came to Manhattan, I felt the whole world is united. Everybody's helping everybody, everybody's together, and, Republicans can talk to Democrats, and Black can talk to white, and all this stuff. And now I feel there's so much anger in all directions.
Yeah, I
What is
feel it.
going on? You feel it too, right? Like,
Well,
my
I
husband
think,
is also,
yeah, I
yeah,
think
like,
that
I mean, this is politics, but like, why do you think that is happening? What's happening?
I
That's
well,
toxic.
from my understanding and from talking to people that are also seeing this as well, I think there seems to be some sort of agenda to create division between the groups. And if they can keep us fighting with each other, the meat eaters versus the vegans, the Republicans versus the Democrats, if we keep fighting with each other, we're not paying attention to what the real problem is. And there's a bigger problem that I think this whole world has. And that is that we are letting authority take over our sovereignness. We are sovereign beings. So are the animals. Each animal, each human on this planet, we have a right to be here. And we need to stand up for our rights. All life does. I mean, and, as much as I respect everybody's right to choose what they want to do, I also think that people need to become aware of what the choices are. Because again, if we're fighting, we're not seeing what the possible choices we have to live a type of life where we can live in harmony with all humans. And so I think that government overreach is becoming more of a problem. More governments are trying to take away our rights. And I think that they're the ones that are behind, this divisiveness and this totalitarian regime that they want to create to control us and to take away our rights. And it seems like a lot of governments, I mean, I can only speak from the United States since I'm most intimate, aware of my own government. But, there's a lot of nefarious activities between government and various corporations. So like, like with the recent pandemic. I sometimes call it plandemic. um,
Yeah,
but
I agree. I just call it the same way.
yeah, so but you've got people that are working in the CDC that are then working in big pharma. And why
Correct.
are these the people that are creating laws and creating mandates that we have to have certain medical procedures?
Mhm.
Why are we making things like this law? And so if they want to do these kind of things to make maybe more money for these corporations, a good way to do that is to kind of slide it underneath a layer of volatile behavior. And if you can create these issues that people can get angry with, it's kind of like problem, reaction, solution. Let's create a problem. So let's create something for people to get angry at, whether it be, the abortion issue because they brought back Roe versus Wade in the United States, or
Yeah.
whether it be, the
Europe
right.
was shocked about that, so
Yeah,
and we have some laws that are quite backwards. Yeah, I need to interrupt you. Like what I feel that people don't understand, that it's pharmaceutical industry is meat and dairy industry as well,
Mhm.
right? And this is where they're getting very much of misinformation out there. They're pushing a lot of misinformation out there. Otherwise, we would be probably on a plant-based diet already a long time ago, right? So it's
Right.
like a profit-driven propaganda. They think they're, and a lot of people who are like they will not admit people there have cattle and all this stuff, what is really happening. But I can tell you that, these little organic farms here that I have here around, you know, I can see, they tell me we need to use antibiotics. We need to vaccinate our animals, even if they go on the pasture. But you know what? In the winter, they're still in concrete, and they take their babies away and they're pushed in the back so nobody can hear their crying and moms cry. I hear it like now, so yeah, we're like next to the capital city, but like a little bit out. And here's like, it's very small, everything is like organic, old fashioned and so on. But it's still, and it's also not realistic. Most people live in big cities, and like, how is somebody on 28th store, like in a skyscraper, gonna raise chickens and cows and stuff, like, and they're trying to convince me, grass-fed beef and all this stuff. And I tell them, like, for grass-fed beef, the cattle that is now on the world, on the planet Earth, you'll need 3 planets Earths if you want to put them all on the grass, right? If not even more, right? It's just not. And I think it's hard to this conversation to have with somebody, because they're just already angry and they're so brainwashed already that it's just really hard to open up their minds, and even harder their hearts, which is crazy.
Yeah. And it's, I think many people do feel like their rights are being taken from them, and they're like, you're not going to take meat away from me, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you want to limit my ability to choose. You want to control what medical procedures I can, take on or agree to.
Correct. Yeah.
But like my meat and my dairy, that's what I want. And so I think, trying to approach these individuals with compassion and say, the meat and dairy will control you. I'm not asking you to, I'm not trying to tell you not to do anything.
What to eat, or what to eat or not to eat. We're just trying to help you be healthy and
exactly, yeah,
right, and help everyone. Yeah, it's very interesting, and here in Europe, I noticed the same, the trends are very similar. And then of course with carnivore diet, where did that came from?
That is, yeah, that's
like keto was bad enough. Now we have also this, and some of the people from fruitarian world are switching to carnivore. And I'm like,
I've noticed
what is wrong with you people? Like,
ridiculous.
Are you forgetting basic things? And to me, it doesn't make sense. Like, I'm never going to go on that side. I can tell you that. They're not going to get me, like, first you're going to kill me before you get me from plant-based diet on the dairy or any kind of stuff like that. So this is also very, like, what is happening here? Are they not, I think a lot of them are not basically educated, like they're not compassionate, right? They don't come to this diet from compassionate side. So they just do it for health, and they see, carnivore diet, because it does eliminate certain things, and then they put input of the stimulants. So they're like, oh,
Right.
wow, I have so much energy again. But they're basically like drug, like they took a lot of cocaine, I feel. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. You're
You
getting
know?
the adrenaline from an animal that's about to be murdered.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so upsetting that they just don't get it, that this is not healing them. You know, of course, from the sad to carnivore diet, again, some kind of fasting. So I get it why these people feel better and heal from some stuff. You know, but this from fruitarian to freaking carnivore, I gotta tell you, I was just like a couple of people I noticed that, wow, wow, you know, and of course, forget about animals, forget about that. They just totally like that doesn't exist, like, you know.
Yeah.
So it's really sad, you know, it's really, really sad. Even some people that I care about, like in Australia, one detox specialist, Dr. Morse, you know,
Hey.
a woman and a guy couple that they hired me to help them and to teach them certain things and so on. And they went from, you know, high fruit, plant-based to carnivore. But I have already 2 clients from carnivore who are like half a year doing that, super ill, you know.
Well,
Super
yeah,
ill.
that's the path. It's so toxic to the kidneys. I mean, there's no fiber in meat. There's no, I mean,
Vitamin C, hello,
yeah,
your vitamin
vitamins,
C.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's such a deficient diet and such a toxic diet. I can't imagine anybody being on such a diet for.
Yeah, and constipation, they're all
Oh
constipated.
yeah.
So, you know, this is like I know the plant-based people, like vegans, who come into their groups and they actually take out the problems that they're posting about. They're all constipated mostly. But this is really crazy. And where is this taking? I don't know. But I feel it's like more we push into the compassion and super health. And, you know, and also like, why don't you people understand, you know, the death and the torture and abuse and, you know, rape and all this stuff, you know. Of course, somebody doesn't use rape for that, what's happening to cows, but I do.
I do
But,
too.
you know, they don't understand this negative energy that they put into themselves via their foods. That cannot heal you long term. That cannot be healthy. It's about the energy levels that we're talking about, right? And electricity
Exactly.
level. And I can't, like, why this happens, you know, like they forget all that knowledge and they go jump into this train of, you know. And also anatomically, they all of a sudden in one day they're convinced that they're like lions and not like apes, you know what I mean? Like,
It's ridiculous. Yeah, I
they're
can't
all
believe it.
lions, grass-fed beef lions that eat grass-fed beef. They all eat everything organic. They all get everything pasture, everything's it's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, like it's like, I don't know. These extremes are now like popping out all over the place, you know. And I'm not talking only diet and politics, this, that, you know. And we still have war going on in Europe. You know,
Yeah.
that's another thing that I don't understand. Somebody's profiting, but we had, you know, I was driving, we would drive down the road and you see the buses of kids and women only, because men stay inside, of just Ukrainian people crying on the side of the roads, you know, bringing everything they have with them they could. Oh my God, you know, really, really bad,
Yeah,
you know.
we should be more evolved and more conscious by this
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
but
by now, right?
it's
But
so.
you know, this reminds me of like a similar story, reminds me of what I went through war. If you remember, in ex-Yugoslavia, we went through war, and it was similar concept that basically it's a Serbian minority. Milosevic came up, he wanted to have big Serbia, and Serbian minority, basically we're killing them. We're like, you know, like fascists and Nazis and stuff, and killing this minority as 3% people in our country. And out of that, they came and bombed civilians, literally civilians, the whole country. You know, I've been through bombing. I've been through not a lot of super scary stuff, but I experienced very scary stuff later in Croatia, where I have family, and I went to hitchhike there. So, you know, I feel that it's like to the media, they were representing, oh, that's a baby crying. They were representing like, it's internal problem, but it was not. It was really like, craziness. Let me run in 10 minutes.
That's fine. I'll let my dogs in.
Okay. Yes, Patty, one more question before we have to go and do the life thing. Do you think we have a chance of ever bringing back this natural way of healing, from detox, fruits, diet, all this stuff, and kind of integrated with the allopathic medical system that now dominates the scene, like bring back at least something before the Rockefeller time, that we could bring this back, right? And do you think, is there a chance that we can win this, I would say almost war with the corporations, and with profit-driven stuff, and bring back the human as a focus of the healing, not just like, profit-driven science and all this stuff, like true science to win, not like the science that it's, totally paid off by corporations, which is probably like 95% of science these days, right?
Yeah,
So do you think we have a chance that we can ever like really put back a human health and nature's health and planet back to the, into this whole medical system that, mainstream, I would say?
Well, I mean, I think, the events since that began in 2020 have opened up a lot of people's awareness to a lot of corruption that they may not have seen before, because it was very much in our face. And some people still, ignored it because they have this belief in authority that, okay, if the people on the television or the people in the government are telling me to do this, I'll just do it. And they're not really thinking about it. They're not really investigating. But the people that did investigate and the people that's had to stand up for their rights, I think they influenced others. And now I know personally, I've been, as a detoxification specialist, busier than ever. I have people reaching out to me all of the time because they're looking for alternatives. So I don't know if it's possible for allopathic medicine and true naturopathy to meld together. I mean, it would be nice if we could bring them to our side. But
without being ridiculed, they call us pseudoscience and all these names, and you know how it is. Like, there's no chance that I can talk to somebody who's allopathic doctor and present to them proof and everything. And like some of our clients, basically they reverse like last stages of cancer, come back and they say, oh, then we probably misdiagnosed you. It's like, what I mean?
I
It's
know.
like ridiculous, right?
I mean, some medical doctors, I think not all medical doctors are, that way. I mean, there are people like Dr. Furman, Dr. McDougall, people that are plant doctors that, are putting off a good message and telling people, don't do all of, like, I was listening to a talk by Dr. McDougall, and he was talking about how many of these, tests that they do for people are unnecessary, like, getting a colon exam or a mammogram. Why are you doing these things? Because they're dangerous. So
that's an interesting point there. I remember that we went all over social media as well, especially mammograms part.
So I think, that's always refreshing to see that people aren't just going to go with what the recommendations are. They're going to go with what they see as, physicians, and they're going by real statistics as opposed to what's the agenda, what's going to make us more money. And that's what people are becoming more aware of, is that there's too much money in health. I think there was a saying, and I can't remember what ancient tradition proposed this, but doctors shouldn't get paid until the patient heals. That should be the way we practice medicine. If what they're doing is so great, let's get the results first, and then we'll give you the but it's all backwards in most countries, because now people have health insurance and everything's free. Well, technically it's free, it's coming from your taxation, but they set these things up so that the big corporations will still get the money they want. So I don't know if those two worlds, I mean, naturopathy and allopathy are just, they're very much different. I mean, I don't know. It's I would love for us all to come as a human species to come to an awareness of, you know, just answering some basic moral questions and, you know, aligning with principles that are based in natural law. That's what I would like to see. But it seems like people are more distracted now than ever with, you know, cell phones and TikTok and all of these crazy things, which, who knows, maybe it is a conspiracy, but maybe they put these things in our hands to keep us unaware and to keep us, you know, in this world of just, okay, I'm just gonna
entertainment.
Yes.
Entertainment more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
Like just lame entertainment, you know, so we would not go and dig into real things, I feel.
Right.
You know, even social media is like everything's controlled by big corporations. And everything is, again, like it's almost, I don't see how we can start breaking slowly pieces, because it's the pieces, you know, you have food industry, you have, you know, pharma, you have this and this, and we got to break each one of these and open up each one of these, but I just don't see it, you know. But as you know, now the differences between the rich and poor are so extreme that it always in the history, when it became so extreme, revolution happened. Everything went crazy, right? So I don't know if something's going to happen soon or it's already happening. It's just like not so obvious. I don't know. I'm really like, on one side, I'm excited about what is coming, because a lot of people, like you said, did open up after this whole pandemic thing. I mean, in Slovenia, I can tell you that they had a problem getting the booster out.
That's good.
You know, because people did the first two and they're like, well, why do we have to do more? You know, like, isn't one enough? And, you know, and now they have a problem that people don't want any vaccinations. Right? So I'm talking about everything, you know, they're really struggling. Like, they actually, in the news, they were talking about like what happened, right? So even the stuff that does help, you know, they don't want anything anymore. So that's what they did. It was like a backfires. But then it's a question, like, how long does that last? And something similar they put on us, you know, and we have another thing like this, you know, and might be worse. I don't know. Wow, it's crazy times. It's also exciting times to be alive, right? And we're not going to stop fighting. We're not going to stop fighting, you know.
I think just, you know, speaking the truth and, you know, being open and loving to people enough to give them the truth. I think that that is the best way to live our lives, is just to kind of not be afraid to speak up, because if we hold back, we are, you know, preventing someone else from having that awareness that will help them.
Thank you so much for this. I have alarm over here. I gotta run. Thank you so much for this, your time. And, you know, I love you. You're the best. And I'm so appreciative. And I have a baby crying in the middle of the night, so I gotta go.
Yes, you need to take care of your little one. Well,
yeah, you too. You too, your little one, big ones. Bye.
Yes. Have a good night. Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.